I was so confused. I remember thinking, what's the difference between life science and health science? And then there was these programs called med science, and then I was like, well, what's the difference between this and normal science? Hi everyone, my name is Santa, and today I'm going to be filming a video all about the Canadian University application process. But this one's a bit more niche because I'm going to be talking about specifically these science programs. I just wanted to make it really clear about what the admission process is like, what the acceptance rates are, and what are each school's specialties. Because once again, I know I really would have benefited from knowing this, and so I just want to share with you guys. Just to let you guys know, my long-term goal is actually business and not science. But nonetheless, I just think this makes me more unbiased. And I think that's good because it's going to help you guys make a decision that's best for you and not based on what I want. So yeah, let's get started. First question that I remember thinking to myself when starting the application process, like, ooh, early in grade 12. And that is, what is the difference between health science and life science? In brief, the main difference is health science is usually for those who want to get into medical school, human focused, more electives, generally easier from what I know, more focused on public health. Life science includes humans, animals, all organisms that are living, more rigid course schedule, usually involves physics and math, more research focused, and yeah, that's from what I know. Something else I wanted to mention is I know, for example, Western also has MedSci. So all the universities I'm going to be talking about today, you actually have to apply through OUAC if you are from Ontario. I know there's OUAC 101 and OUAC 105. I'll put like a short description here. But generally in my year, that was due January 15th, but you should apply earlier if you want early acceptance. So let's get started with the first school, which is almost the most well-known school in Canada for their science programs, and that is Mcmaster. Okay, and specifically I'm going to be talking about Mcmaster Health Science. Mcmaster Health Science, from what I know, is basically like a med school prep because many of the students that take this program go into med school. Although technically you're not being trained for it, it's really focused on group work, communication, and something called problem-based learning, which isn't typical of most science programs. Something that a lot of people admire about this program because it's not that traditional learning style, and apparently it's really good and helps people learn a lot better. Something you need to know about Mcmaster is there was a 4.8% acceptance rate, and yes, the acceptance rate is really low and they usually only admit 200 students per year. Something you need to know if you're interested in applying for this program, you need a minimum of 90% school average for your top 6, and also you need to submit a supplementary application which is due about early February. It's actually not what you think it is because normally for supplementaries you think, oh, I just have to list all my extracurriculars. But Mcmaster's application is different because what they're trying to see is how you think. So they ask some abstract kind questions and you need to answer them. And there's not actually a rubric for you to figure out how to get in or how you need to answer. They really just are looking at how you think. I'll link below some of their past papers so you can see what their applications look like. Some pros of Mcmaster Health Science is, firstly, you have a lot of electives, and this is really good because it really helps to boost your GPA, and as such, it's easier to get into med school because having a high GPA is like a must for med school. This program focuses on the development of soft skills. Something else is that this program is really established and it has an amazing reputation. The major thing about why people love Mcmaster so much, the chances of going into med school coming from the health science program is exceptionally high. Okay, so let me give you a short preamble. Typically only 5 to 10% of people get into med school, but the people from Mcmaster Health Science, about 60% of them get into med school, which is incredibly high. There's no other undergraduate program in Canada that even comes close to these statistics. as of this moment. Yeah, another bonus is that there's relatively small class sizes here because there's so little people who are accepted into this program. Okay, now let's go into the cons of McMaster Health Science. The first one is, can you even get in? Yeah, like I said, there's so many fantastic people who don't get in, and so I guess that's one of the major cons. The problem-based learning style is not for everyone. I guess the rest of the cons are more based on your preferences about if you like where the school is, if you like the school area, but that just means you have to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. Now let's talk about McMaster Life Science. And so this program has a module-based learning system, which is your typical learning system. And the admission process is once again done through UAC. There's no supplementary applications, unlike health science, and the admission average is about 87 to 90%. But from what I hear, this year it was about like 92% because I know a lot of people who had low 90s but still didn't get in. I think they let in about 1,000 students each year into this program. And I also have read that the life science programs at McMaster are also very strong. Some pros is that it's McMaster. The second pro is that since it is a really general program, it gives you a lot of options as to where you want to go in the future and gives you a lot more flexibility, different directions and areas you want to go to in the future. And yeah, it has a lot of opportunities to expand into something that you will like. Some cons is that you don't have as many electives. It's not the easiest course load from what I know because you have mandatory courses like physics and math. The second con is that the bigger classes might seem a bit impersonal if that is something that you valued a lot, and thus you don't have a lot of face time with professors. Yeah, that's about it. Once again, other ones are just your personal preference. Now let's talk about the school that is recently competing with health science, and that is Queen's Health Science. So let's talk about it. It's a relatively new program, and so the first graduates, I believe, are going to be coming out in 2022. And so this does mean that there's no statistics on their acceptances to med school yet, if that is something you want to know. From what I've heard, it's a really good program, and it prepares you for medicine, and the first year courses in Queens and McMaster are different. So I do suggest you look into that. I have heard from some places it's even easier to get high grades at Queens than McMaster, but that was just anecdotal and I am not sure about that. Something else about Queens that's very interesting is that they have a flipped learning style in their health science program, which is there to rival the problem-based learning style in McMaster. The flipped learning style is particularly good if you're a self-learner, and apparently the first year mandatory courses are pharmacology, philosophy, history of healthcare, anatomy, human cell physiology, social and physical determinants of health. I don't know. Admission process. So similarly to McMaster, you'll have to submit your grades through OUAC. Also, there are written applications which have become mandatory this year. Something you should know that the anticipated admission average is about 90% for their on-campus health science program, and the acceptance rate for Queen's Health Science in 2021 was about 4.25%. Some pros about Queen's Health Science is that it's relatively easy to get good grades from what I've heard, and secondly, it has small class sizes. Some cons is that it's relatively new, so I'm not sure about the acceptance into med school and such. Yeah, the other things are just based on your personal preferences. Okay, let's go into Queen's Life Science. Generally, life science program, very good program and very good school. Honestly, the pros and cons are very similar to that of other life sci programs. So essentially, I suggest you go in and do some research and see if this is for you, if you like the learning area, if you like the location of the school. But yeah. Okay, let's go on to talk about the third school, which is U of T. Specifically their life science program. Keep in mind that U of T is the largest school in Canada with over 70,000 students, so everyone's experiences will vary. Okay, so from what I've heard, it's a really strong program. However, it is very difficult to get a high GPA, and a high GPA is needed to get into a good med school. For the admission process, you only need to apply through OUAC, and I believe the admission range is from low to mid 80s. Some pros about this program: since you're going into Uoft, which I think is right now considered the best school in Canada, you get to interact with top researchers and make connections with essentially people from top schools. And this means that you can get references from the best researchers and research opportunities. Something else that's really good is going to Uoft for life science and succeeding means that it's much easier to get into a Uoft PhD program. Uoft also has a huge research culture, so I suggest if you really want to go into research, consider Uoft. This is specifically because if you want to go into research in graduate school, grades don't matter as much, so it makes it so that you can afford going to Uoft and getting those lower grades. Some cons about Uoft are that it is well known to have low grades, and so again, the chances of going into med school are significantly lower. Something else is that apparently Uoft is very depressing. That is just what my brother has told me and what I have heard. I do also hear that it is very competitive, so that's something to keep in mind. Lastly, I do know that the majority of people drop out in their first and second year. Now let's talk about Western. Western is a quirky gal, so Western actually doesn't offer life science. What they offer is med sci, health sci, and then normal science. Med science is actually comparable to a life science program in terms of the workload because you have a lot of mandatory courses like physics, math, and a really rigid schedule. But the content is like health science. However, I would say med sci is more like life science than it is health science. It just has a focus on human health. The admission average is low 90s to mid 90s, and the acceptance is about 750 people. Pros of this program is that out of the 77 people who responded to this survey, 33% of them actually are pursuing medicine, which is pretty good statistics. However, I do want to highlight that the flaw with this is that only 77% of people responded, so this isn't completely accurate, but nonetheless, even if about 25% of people made it to med school, those are still incredible statistics compared to the normal 5 to 10% of people who get into med school from each school. From what I hear, getting high grades in med sci is definitely possible at Western, which is another pro because high grades are important if you want to go into med school. Some cons are, once again, the rigid schedule. Like I know for first year, you only have one full year course of electives that you can take, so that's like 2 different courses. You also need math, you need physics. It is really competitive. From what I hear, out of the 750 people who make it in, there's like a weeding out process and only about like 500 people are left at the end. But that is just what I hear. Now let's talk about the other program at Western. The admission for this program is about high 80s to low 90s, and they accept 350 people. It is more sociology based. So if you're looking into hard sciences, I would suggest MedSci. Also, I'm taking this program, so just be aware I have some biases. Some pros about this program is that it's really flexible. It has a lot of electives. You don't have to take math or physics, which I like because I don't like those courses. It's also easier to get high grades in comparison to programs like MedSci. That is only if you think sociology and writing and stuff like that is easier than science programs. Some cons about this program: I'm not sure if it's well known for getting people into med school. Apparently, from what I've heard, it also doesn't have the best faculty. But something you should know is that grading in courses like this is really subjective, and so okay, about their science program, which I talked about before, the admission is about mid 80s. They accept about 890 people. Some pros are that you have more freedom to decide what you want to do in the future with this course because it is very general. And some cons is that you don't have priority picking modules that you want to study like you do in math science. However, it is less competitive. Okay, now let's go into the final comparison. Either way, I think all of these schools are magnificent, and really it just depends on your preferences, what you want to do, what you like. I would start by really ranking what is important to you. Location, scholarship, what do you want to do in the future? Do you want to go into med school? Do you want to go into research? How close is it to your home? What food does it have? The community, the learning approach, and really make your decision based on that. Compare the program based on your personal rankings because everyone has different priorities. For example, I didn't want to get into med school, and as such, I didn't apply to a lot of the programs like the Mcmaster Health Science or Queen's Health Science. Do a comparison about what you like, what you value, and have that help you choose your school. So for example, if you want to pick health science between Mcmaster and Queen's, some questions to ask yourself is, do I want a lot of party culture or do I not like party culture? Do I like Kingston more or do I like Hamilton more? Do I like inquiry-based learning more or do I like flipped learning style teaching? It's up to you to decide. You have so many choices, assuming you get in. Hopefully you will get in. Okay, final thoughts. It's more about what you do in university compared to what university you go to. So medical schools in Ontario specifically, and really all across Canada, don't really judge you based on what university you go to. They really judge you based on your GPA, your MCAT score, and the extracurriculars that you've done, among other things. So that's just something to keep in mind. Volunteer if you want to go into research, if you want to volunteer at hospitals, get that high GPA, do well on your MCAT, and that's what's going to help you get into medicine. Something to consider is that it's not just the easiness of the program, but also knowing what would be best for you. As I keep mentioning, there's several factors that determine your success and not just how easily they mark. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know down below if you want a part 2 featuring other schools or even different programs like business, because that's what I'm going to be doing in the long term. And yeah, please remember to leave a like on this video and subscribe. And I hope you have an amazing day. Bye!